Welcome to the Duckpin Podcast with your host, Brian Griffiths. And now, here's Brian.
This week, we are celebrating our anniversary here at the Duckpin, our very first anniversary. We launched this show on, not the show, but the duckpin.com. We launched that on June 8th, 2020. And here we are a year later. And we are still going strong, obviously. Now, obviously, as you remember, the podcast didn't come until September. We waited a couple of months to launch the podcast. But we've actually had a very successful year. We are continuing to grow in our social media presence. We are continuing to grow in readership, which is exactly what I was hoping for. As I mentioned when we started this, there was no business plan to the Duckpin. We're not out here trying to make money. We are out here trying to provide interesting content that's interesting to me, interesting to you. Gives me an outlet to write about things, including politics, sports, culture, food, etc., and so forth. Now, you may be wondering what we're going to do in the future, what some of the things we may be looking at doing here at the Duckpin in the future. Well, for one thing, you're going to get more topical podcasts. A lot of our early podcasts were interview podcasts, and those are great, and those are fun, and those are very meaningful experiences where we can share stories about people, whether they're in sports, entertainment, politics, what have you. It becomes a little hard sometimes, especially as we are returning to opening, to nail down some people to have a podcast interview. And sometimes that is challenging. So we're going to have some more topical podcasts, not just because of the challenges that we face in trying to track down people and nail them down for an interview time, but also because I have things to say. And if anybody who has listened to my podcasts over the years knows I have plenty of things to say. And sometimes we need to talk about those topics. Now, we've seen several times already where I have deviated and talked about topics, particularly of a political nature. We're going to try to get away from all of these topical podcasts, not the interview podcast, but the topical podcasts being political in nature, because there are things that need to be said and that I do want to say. But you're going to look forward to some of that in the future, too. Speaking of podcasts, as you know, Maryland Podcast Month has been a project of mine starting over at the old place. And it's something that has brought with me here to the Duckpin. We were able to this year host the Maryland Podcast Awards as a Duckpin production. So Maryland Podcast Month comes around every May, but we're looking to build out a little more of that infrastructure there. So stay tuned to the next couple of weeks, and you're going to see something else coming down the pike related to Maryland Podcast Month that hopefully will continue to make for a more robust podcast universe. The Leadership Conference. I know a lot of people have asked about the Leadership Conference and whether or not we were going to continue the Leadership Conference. I made a statement back in December saying that we were not going to have a leadership conference in 2021. However, I will tell you that I am looking at options for bringing it back in 2022. And the reason that I'm doing that is because, one, I think it's a very necessary and needed thing for people to have a policy and politics leadership conference that is available to them, that is focused on Maryland and state and local issues, and not just what goes on in Washington. My biggest critique has always been people who will shell out hundreds and thousands of dollars to attend CPAC, but will not put in the effort to attend something more close to home, more local, rather, and will not put in that effort and try to create something that comes and addresses the issues where we can first address them, which is here at the state and local level. Anybody who tells you that what's going on in Washington is more important than what's going on in your own backyard is lying to you, and you shouldn't listen to that person. We're going to try to bring this back. I'm not making any promises, but it's something that I'm looking to try to re-implement in 2022. Candidate surveys. I know candidate surveys are a large undertaking, something that I have done in the past, and I can tell you how much work it is. However, it's very meaningful work, particularly in providing context and providing information about candidates that you're not otherwise going to hear from. This time around, though, I'm going to expand it a little bit to try to expand it to include all candidates, regardless of their party affiliation. That may wind up being more than I really want to take on. But we do want to make sure that we have every opportunity for people to become informed about the candidates that are going to be on their ballot. And we'll provide them all with the same survey and provide them with the same opportunity to get information about their candidacy out there. Unlike previous years where I waited until the filing deadline, we're going to go ahead and get that started right now. We'll start sending those candidate surveys out to filed candidates and get people information about where those candidates stand on the issues. We're going to have a little more video projects. One of the things that I've been trying to do is to try to make a better use of our YouTube presence, better use of Facebook video. And there are projects that I want to do that are not necessarily podcast related that will provide additional video content for the Duckpin, for our YouTube page. I'm not quite sure what exactly that's going to look like yet, or what the time frame of that's going to be, but I want to continue to expand our options, and so that it's not just a podcast, it's not just the reading, but it's also a visual component to that as well. So I'm looking forward at trying to figure out ways to make that happen in the future. And look, we're going to try to bring some sports into this. Okay. We'll try to get some sports coverage, particularly as relates to the live broadcast aspect of things. Obviously, with our relationships that we have regarding wiffle ball, relationships that we have regarding mini golf, there are ways for us to kind of dip our toe in that sports broadcasting field. Now, obviously, we're not gonna be bidding on NHL or baseball anytime soon, but it's something that I want to try and want to see if we can get our interests in. One of the things over the course of the last year has been me recognizing how important it is, not just for the purposes of the Duckpin, but also for my sanity, to try to expand the level of interest in the things that I actually care about and the things I'm actually writing about. Especially when you realize how much of a disaster politics is at many levels. You start to realize that, you have to have that balance. You have to have focus on issues and focus on things that are happening that are outside the political realm, or else you go mad. And hopefully over the course of the next year, we'll be able to do that in a way that is both meaningful, not just to myself, which, and let's admit this, everything that I'm doing is for myself, and because it's something that I think I would want to read, and it's something that I find interesting, and I hope that other people will find interesting too. And if you like it, that's great. And if you don't like it, hey, you know what? Thanks for coming anyway. As I said, we're not out to make money on this deal. We're not trying to get clicks. We're not trying to, we're not trying to do anything like that. We are trying to sell you a t-shirt though. If you go over to the Duckpin store over at Creator Spring, and I'll make sure that we put a link there. There'll be a link in the podcast notes, as well as the video notes, about where to go ahead and buy that shirt, any of our shirts over at the Duckpin store. But we're trying to create interesting content. If I was setting out to make $1 million off of this, I wouldn't be doing the things that we're doing here. This is a labor of love, much like my past media projects have always been. And it's a labor of, a creative outlet. And these are things that I find interesting. I hope that you do too. So please, the best thing you can give us for a birthday present, I wrote about this earlier this week, is to please like us. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, the YouTube page. Please like us, subscribe to us. Invite your friends and family and everybody to subscribe to us as well. That's really the best gift you can give us, is to give us a broader platform to share what we're doing here and to share the things that we are writing about, that we are creating here. And nobody likes being as dependent on social media as we are for clicks and views, but that's the world we live in. And anything that you can do to help us with that, we appreciate. Please feel free to reach out to me at any time. The duckpin@gmail.com is how you can do that. I am open to criticism, critique, constructive feedback, praise, whatever. Please feel free to just email me at the duckpin@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you with that as well. Beyond that, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a fan of what we do here at theduckpin.com. Thank you very much. God bless.
This has been the Duckpin Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and download.